Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there he is, the guy that drops knowledge on us every Monday night, senior editor over at Athlon Sports, Stephen Lassan. How are you, my friend?
Mike, I'm doing well. Man, I'm looking forward to another great weekend of SEC ball. We had some awesome games on Saturday, so excited to get ready for these showdowns on Saturday with Texas and Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma. It's going to be a heck of a weekend.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is accurate, but I assume it is because, Josh Pate, he does a heck of a job, and he doesn't just throw stuff out there. But I don't know if you saw this from him, Stephen. I believe it was today or yesterday. He put out the information that, yes, we are in the latter half of the season, but technically, if you go from when the season started, the very first day, to the national championship, we are smack dab in the middle. So maybe we've got more college football season than you even realize at this point in time.
I'll buy that. Yeah, man. We just think about all the great matchups still to come this weekend. We still got games against rivals coming up in a few weeks. Thanksgiving, we've got the playoff, we got bowl games. So, Mike, there is never a bad weekend of college football. The slate could look light and it ends up being awesome. But man, there's just still so much to play for. And you add that to the backdrop of the coaching carousel and everything else. It is going to be a fantastic November, December, January stretch here. So I'm excited. I will say, I don't know whether to be appalled that's your dance moves or the slander that I heard on Wednesday's show about having hot tea at night. Mike,
yeah,
you can't stand for this. I was already outraged. And then
hot tea for the win.
Yeah.
Because Shane does not, despite his size, the man does not a culinary expert. I can kindly say that. He likes the same couple of dishes, and he just eats too much of it. He doesn't. In my mind, he's not got a good sense of what is good and what is not when it comes to food and drink. I'll just say that.
There could be something to be said though for having consistency though. Like it's like a good running game. It works. Your insides and your outside zones, whatever is working well, you stick to it. You don't stray too much from the menu because you don't know. You don't know how that's going to go, right? I mean, if you get something you haven't had and it's not very good, you leave hungry, right?
That's true, Stephen. That is true. But I do want to say, because I don't want people to think Shane's just got horrible taste, because one thing he does got excellent taste in, that's Tennessee whiskey. Come on, shout out Tennessee Legend Distillery. Give them a shout out. Go to your local package store, liquor store, ABC store, whatever you call it. Go in there. If they don't have Tennessee Legend, ask them why the heck not, and tell them we sent you, because they are the presenting spirit of that SEC podcast. Really help out our great friends over at Tennessee Legend. And that's probably the highlight of the food and drink that has ever graced Cousin Shane's lips is Tennessee Legend. You know what?
How much did Cousin Shane consume on Tennessee's off week? Like, set the over under. Is it higher on the off week or is it higher on game days?
Oh, it's definitely higher on game days. I think on the off week it's a snap and clear, as old Butch used to say. But he's got to get his mind right for these Saturdays where he just goes ham. You know what?
Oh, so preparation, right? Like 7 days out, to start preparing Saturday for the next Saturday. I like the way, I like the way Shane's thinking. It's like they always say, like, hydration for the game starts after the last one. So that way you're starting preparation for the week ahead on Sunday to get ready. So I like the way y'all are thinking. Although this hot tea slander, man, it's really got to stop. I mean, hot tea and SEC, just think of the opportunities here.
Well, Stephen, I told you I had a little surprise for you. And I think you're on to something with this hot tea. Because here's an update. My dog, I think Hugh Freeze, finally tracked me down. If he breaks in, this is going to be the last episode of this show. But shout out Stephen, who is taking the lead for the first time this season. The Cousins don't lead. Thanks to Stephen and his hot tea. He's in first place in the weekly pick'ems. The Cousins dropped a spot. We've already got our cousin picker for this week, so I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a busy week. And Shane and I, even though our upset pick, I had multiple upset picks that were awful, but four out of six right. So I'm right there in third. Shane, the non-tea drinker, dead last, and that's if no other reason to show that tea is great for you and great for your mind and great for your picks. Heck, we should get a tea sponsor. All this tea talk we're doing. You know what?
I love it. I think we could do tea and what do you think? Tea and coffee? But I don't know how we'd open the show because Shane's got the can opening. We'd have to figure out a creative way to get some tea or coffee on here. But I think we could do it. We recording at night sometimes, Mike, after a long day. It may help the spirits a bit as we dive through what's going to be a crazy weekend in the SEC. And I should say, Mike, on the predictions, this might be, I know it's your favorite, Separation Saturday with Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, Mississippi State, Missouri, Arkansas, LSU. You could be contrarian on the picks this week and probably do pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, this is one heck of a weekend here in the Southeastern Conference. And I love the fact, Stephen, that we have 6 conference matchups. That's always fun. But I really like the fact that 4 of them, the spread is less than a touchdown. So
yeah,
potentially anybody's ball games. And then we got 2 likely blowouts. But again, who knows? I mean, this league's crazy. You know what?
It really is. And what's the trend been this season? It's been close games across the board. It's been a season where it's not just the SEC. It's kind of everywhere in college football. We're seeing close games after close games. So just because those spreads are approaching 3 touchdowns for Florida, Ole Miss, South Carolina, A&M, number one, I wouldn't necessarily guess those are going to be blowouts, but also there could be some intrigue within those games. Like I know this is, to me, one of the craziest things coming out of last weekend was DJ Lagway and Garrett Nussmeier both benched. I mean, what kind of bold prediction in the preseason would have been like these guys got benched, and looking at Lenora Sellers playing Texas A&M, seeing DJ Lagway against Ole Miss, like there could be some interesting storylines as far as bouncing back after rough performances this year.
Yeah, you just gave me an interesting question, Stephen. If I were to ask you in the preseason, taking injury out, because we don't want to go down that road. But if I were to tell you in the preseason, what is more likely, Garrett Nussmeier and DJ Lagway are both up for the Heisman, or they both got benched, what would you have said in the preseason?
I think the most likely option would be like contending for the Heisman Trophy.
Right.
Just because raw talent. Also, look at the LSU with the fact that they went out in the portal and upgraded receivers, trying to bring in guys around Aaron Anderson to fill in gaps. And you also just kind of thought, hey, it's a big year for LSU. They did all this in the portal. It's a roster that should contend for the SEC and national championship. Also, you had to like the way DJ Lagway closed 2024. And certainly the injury concerns were hanging out there, but a healthy Eugene Wilson, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, like that trio is pretty good. And if Lagway was healthy, I think I would have said, yeah, like Heisman contender. So man, they're in so many levels this year. The close games, like the quarterbacks that were projected at the top of college football have struggled. It's just been a very weird and also very interesting season. And that's why I think if you assume that the season is going to play out just as the favorites go the rest of the way, I think that's probably the wrong assumption.
Well, no doubt. And here's another question. I keep coming up with questions as your knowledge is somehow seeping into my head here, and I'm getting these fantastic questions asked you.
Like a good hot tea bag, when you're,
Exactly. Do you think there's anything to, and we shouldn't make blanket generalizations, not every situation is the same, but do you think there's anything, I mean, listen to what you just said, the guys and we're all guilty of this. I keep seeing I just referenced Josh Pate. I've seen, look how awful his power rankings were of the quarterbacks. Mine is complete dog shit. I mean, literally every preseason SEC quarterback ranking that I have seen is just so bad now. But is there anything to the fact that in the SEC, we know these guys are compensated very well, and the fact that I would have to assume, and again, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to assume that all the big time quarterbacks in this conference are making $1 million at least, probably a lot more than that. Do you think that has affected their performance at all?
It's a really good question. I just, while you were mentioning quarterbacks, I made kind of a list of 5 or 6 that I thought was having, underachieving seasons. Some of them came from the SEC. I think, obviously, I'd throw Cade Klubnik of Clemson, Drew Aller from Penn State. He got hurt, but he wasn't playing great before that. I think there could be something to it, but I also think when you start to kind of peel back maybe if you go back to July or August, and I think one of the interesting things was if you start going conference by conference, you kind of go, there's a really void here of quarterbacks, especially in the Big Ten. I mean, Ohio State lost Will Howard. Aller was projected the top quarterback in the Big Ten. You're kind of like, do I feel good about that? I don't think so, but that's probably the truth. There's just there was a lot of unknown at the position. And I think the guys that we did think were going to be good, like Lagway, there was the injury concern with Nussmeier. I think the offensive line, I think Sellers' offensive line. Honestly, as we're going through this, I'm just thinking Klubnik, Aller to some extent, Nussmeier and Sellers, and Arch Manning too all had offensive line concerns. And it's also interesting in that regard because I have seen, other people have said there's an offensive line concern college football wide this year too. There's not a lot of high offensive lines that have lived up to the hype. So there could be, I would say it's not necessarily one thing. I think it's probably a lot of things. I think it's the offensive line issues. It could be some individual things. It could also be just a weird year where quarterbacks aren't living up to the hype, but also could be a year where the individual circumstances, whether it's an injury, it's an offensive line, all these things have added up for all these quarterbacks to struggle this year. Because, I mean, let's be honest, nobody had Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson as 2 of your Heisman finalists if you were to give out the award tomorrow. So it has been a very strange year for quarterbacks. And I think it's probably not one thing, it's probably many things.
Yeah. Well, see, that's why you're the smart one. I would have just said, yes, the hell the money. They don't deserve it. Give it to us. But no, that's a logical answer there. So let's see how much other logic you got, Steven, because we're going to break down your thoughts on the week that was, the week ahead, playoff projections, panic meter. So we got a lot to dive into here, Steven. So let's, son of a, are we even live right now? It's not telling me that we're live. Are we just talking into the void here? Hold on a second. No, I think we're live. I don't know what's going on. Let us know if you can. Okay, it says we're live, but StreamYard is not telling me we're live. So I thought for a minute there, Steven, we were just 15 minutes talking into the damn void. But all right, sorry. My fault.
It was a good conversation, though, right?
It always tells me that we're live, and right now it says not live. So if it goes out, the only thing I know is the comments are keeping us. They're updating. So
this dang YouTube and ESPN people have invaded this StreamYard now.
No, you need a subscription. This is our announcement. We're canceling, just like YouTube TV canceled on your ass, and Disney and ESPN, all those scumbags. You're not going to get this service unless you get Fubo TV. Not. All right, so let's get into it, Steven. Sorry about that. Let's go. Man, the game I was dead wrong about. Texas A&M, Steven, number 1 team in the SEC when it comes to undefeated. And undefeated, of course, in conference play, kicking some ass here. 38-17 over Missouri. Thoughts on this one, Steven?
Mike, I know this is kind of a basic way to look at this but anytime you can go on the road and win, as 38-17, 20+ point victory, and move one step closer to the SEC championship and playoff spot, you'll take it if you're Texas A&M. And so no more 8-4 jokes this year from this team by any means, because they are a national championship contender. And I think the thing that stood out to me on Saturday, Mike, was early in the game, it felt very much like a defensive struggle. And it felt once you got to that touchdown play when Texas A&M went up 7, and then they got the fumble and scored another touchdown. It's like, that was probably it. They probably didn't need a whole lot more because the defense played lights out. If you would have told me, though, before the game Missouri ran for 200 yards, I probably would have been, they probably got a good chance to win, right? But man, they made life so difficult for Matt Zollers in his first start. 7 completions out of 22, 77 yards. And I think this game combined with some of the others, I think shows how dangerous this team is. And I'm talking about Texas A&M, because some weeks it's the ground game. Some weeks it's Marcel Reed. We see the difference that Concepcion and Craver have made. And then the defense going on the road and putting down a statement performance against Missouri. So this team can hurt you in a lot of ways. And anytime you'll take a road victory, 20 plus points, move one step closer to the playoff, this is a really, really good win for Texas A&M.
Yeah. And again, one I didn't think they could get. I thought this was a massive trap game. But once again, the Aggies keep proving the doubters wrong, like me, Stephen, with a complete team effort here. And isn't it wild that it seems like they can just win in so many different ways? You know what?
It really is, Mike. And I think that's what makes them dangerous when we start thinking about the national title race. Because, I'd be curious to know kind of, how this team, like from an odds perspective, has moved up the last couple of weeks, because they got to be getting closer to the top outside of Ohio State. Because I think, of the teams that we start studying for, okay, who can go from just being like a semifinalist to national championship team? I mean, this A&M team has all the ingredients. Certainly you could maybe criticize, like, okay, clean up the penalties a little bit, the rush defense at times, maybe sometimes the accuracy for Marcel Reed can be hit or miss, but still, I mean, this team just keeps finding ways to win. They're getting better. They can hurt you in many different ways, even special teams with the fake punt. I mean, this coaching staff has really pushed all the right buttons this year. And I'll go back to something that we talked about in the preseason. 2 things. I think knowing what your biggest questions are in the portal and executing the strategy, like getting Concepcion and Craver, has changed this offense dramatically. I mean, 2 plays this season, the Mario Craver play against Notre Dame, and then the Concepcion screen on Saturday. It's they did not have this ability last year. It's taking short passes and going long. And so anytime you can completely change your offense based upon those additions, it's helped Reed. It's changed the dynamic ability. And the other thing is, last offseason, Mike, you remember Mike Elko was so irritated at his pass defense after the bowl game. It's like, this is not going to happen again. Well, it sure as heck didn't happen on Saturday. And this pass defense is one of the best in the SEC in the country. So I think this gets at another thing about A&M, is trying to find the right coach that takes all these good things that this program has and making it actually a reality. And that's what Elko has done. He hasn't talked about putting up the national championship plaque. It's just been doing the work. That's going in the portal and getting what you need, and then doing it as well by improving the defense. So I think this A&M team, if they keep playing like they are, they got a good chance to go very far in the playoff.
Well, Stephen, if we could do a playoff for the best cousins, I mean, they'd all make the field, if you ask me. But one of the final 4, probably. Stephen up!
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Stephen up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Stephen up. He gifted Marcus Roberts. Marcus, welcome to
the family.
Yeah. And then our buddy, he's rising up the ranks too, Stephen. All Day Trey, he gifted Fidos. Hope I didn't butcher that. Fidos, welcome to
the family.
Thank you, JP, for the assist. And then Zio, he gifted as well to that one. I think I was able to see. Oh no, I missed it again. Man, my YouTube is all over the place. He gifted Trent Raiku. I'm sure I butchered that, but Trent, welcome to
the family.
And then, oh man, now they're coming in hot. I think they're just testing me, Steven. Junior gifted 5, and Freedom Van gifted 5. So shout out. I think I 100% can get those, but Junior gifted Migrating Coconuts. Man, that guy's been gifted seemingly every month. Alexander Fields, Benzo, Tate Bullard, Carson, Caleb Vibes. That's a cool name. And then Freedom Van got Todd Rasmussen, Selena's Reborn, and more. What? Erie Pizzeria. I don't know if I'd eat there. And Sarah O. and Joseph Grimes. You've all been gifted. Welcome to
Family.
Yeah. Oh, son of a. Now, Jason James, we got 5 more. We do appreciate it. I shouldn't say son of a. But Jason James, he gifted Luke Ledwig, Toll Stevens, Jeff Jr., Nicodemus Maximus, cool name, Mike L. Zinga. You have all been gifted by Jason James. Welcome to
The family.
Yeah. Thank you so much, cousins. We appreciate each and every one of you for keeping us going here. Show wouldn't exist without you. All right. So A&M, we were saying, looks playoff bound for sure. I mean, any shot. There's no shot this team doesn't make the playoff, is there?
If they lose to South Carolina, they lose to Samford. If they lose to Texas, maybe. But that's a long shot, Mike. I would say, I hate to say playoff lock until we get a little deeper, just because some weird stuff can happen in the world of college football. But just in terms of percentages, with the next 2 games being South Carolina and Samford, and given that they are heavy favorites, I think they're about as close to a lock in college football as you can get. I think Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, probably the 3 of the teams sitting the best as we go into Week 12.
Yeah, and then I don't know what to say about Missouri, Stephen. And I'm not trying to kick them while they're down. I'm really not. But, man, this is 2 missed opportunities. Let's call it what it is. The last 2 seasons. Do you think Missouri will ever make a playoff under Eli Drinkwitz?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the 12-team playoff era gives a lot of room for teams like Missouri to fight their way in. And I honestly believe if you keep knocking on the door that many times of 9-10 wins, eventually you'll break through. Now, you could also argue, with the schedule that they have, the way it broke down, the Alabama, Texas A&M coming to your place, it's going to be hard to picture a better draw in the future. I think the one thing that gives me some confidence here for Missouri, Mike, is, I think you trust Eli Drinkwitz. He's pushed all the right buttons so far, winning back-to-back double-digit win seasons. They've done good work in the portal and on the recruiting trail. Also think Kirby Moore, Corey Batoon have done a pretty good job for the most part. Certainly some things you could criticize them for, but I think he's doing all the right things for the program. Is this a missed opportunity this year? Yeah, it is, because they had the good schedule and they had 2 of the better teams in the SEC coming to their place. So it is a bit of a missed opportunity. And I think the question now is, with Mississippi State, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, by no means none of those games are guaranteed wins. Now that you are out of the playoff race, can you finish on a high note and get to 9-3? Or do you kind of stumble your way to 6-6? And Mike, also in fairness too, I think this is the hard part about quarterbacks is Zollers look really good against Vanderbilt. Sometimes I think it's like you come off the bench, you're not thinking, you're throwing passes, and it's like the next week it's like, oh, Elko's got this offense in a blender. They're throwing a lot of stuff. You're worried about Cassius Howe coming off the edge. It's just a little different. And so I suspect Zollers will be fine long term. I think that this also probably says a lot about Texas A&M just being really good too.
Right. And we don't have to go down a giant rabbit hole here, because I know we're 1% into the program here, but there's a lot of talk. The SEC wants a playoff expansion to 16, and they've come out and made this public on Paul Feinbaum's show. It was, Mississippi State's president said we support no automatic qualifiers. So that means, in simple terms, Big Ten champion guaranteed a spot, SEC guaranteed, ACC champ guaranteed. Do away with all that. Just, I don't know how they'll do the rankings, probably the same way they do it now, but just the highest ranked. I assume that's what they're supporting. And I'm not guaranteeing the SEC gets its way, because the Big Ten is opposed to that, because we all know they have 2 good teams, maybe 3, and they don't want to play against 9 SEC teams every year, which they may have to, because we got real teams down here. But Stephen, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's good? Because I get it, more access, things of that nature. I didn't really think the 12-team playoff would be good for college football. I think it's been amazing, just having this many teams in the conversation late in the season. But what's your thoughts on 16? And I don't mean to skew your answer. You tell me how you feel. But last year, I know I said it was amazing, but actually the playoff itself, there were some lackluster games. I know they've changed the seating and everything. But when we get to that 12th, we're sitting here debating like, well, Bama, 9-3. They just got their ass whooped 2 weeks ago, but they should have got in. Or Ole Miss, they lost 3. They lost to one of the worst teams in the conference, but they should have got it. Like, it's almost like a stretch to find that 12th or 13th team. What's your thoughts on 16? Because I feel like that's going to be even worse.
So one thought, Mike, before I answer your question, I want to know if there's any SEC fans out there who did some trolling this weekend, because I saw some Big Ten fans. They were trolling, Alabama struggles against South Carolina. It's, the SEC's mid or this. Well, Indiana needed a last-minute win over Penn State. So I just want to know, any of you guys out there trolling this weekend? So to answer your question on a more serious note, I don't like the idea of more expansion. I think it's less about adding teams that can win a national title and just that we're in this era of there's 12 teams in. You see this with the NCAA tournament as well. There's these handful of teams that just missed and they want to be in and they don't want to get left out. And so the conversation has shifted now from, okay, we had the BCS, then we went to 4, and now it's like, we got these teams left out. We got to find a way to get them in. I don't think the 16th best team is going to win the national title, but because it's all about the playoff now, that's where I think this is going to end up. Eventually, I think it will end up at 16. So I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. I think it is good that it does keep maybe more fan bases engaged, and especially in this sense, like if you're Tennessee or Missouri with 3 losses, if there is a 16-team playoff, are you a little bit more engaged down the stretch because maybe you get to 9-3 and you could get in there? I could see that. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I do think the 16-team playoff, Mike, I think it might be 5 guaranteed spots and 11 at-larges. There is no world where the SEC should agree to give guarantee spots to any 4 Big 12, 4 ACC, or 6 Big 10 teams, because there's just simply not enough of qualified teams. They should go all at-large, if anything.
Hey, well, how about this question? Appreciate you, Michael Dunlap. Our season's already a wash. But do y'all think an 18.5 spread against Texas A&M is a little steep? I mean, Gamecocks do have a solid defense, so we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we appreciate the donation, Michael Dunlap. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on that 18.5-point spread, South Carolina at A&M?
Mike, my first question about that game this week is, from a South Carolina perspective, could you do anything that catches kind of Texas A&M off guard, maybe because you have a new OC and maybe you can throw some new things out there?
Right.
I do think it just, the past isn't necessarily indicative of what's going to happen on Saturday, but winning by 20 something points in your last couple SEC games, and some of those have been at 17 by Florida. That's kind of the gauge that I would probably use for a game like this. If you asked me probably before I saw the spread, I probably would have said probably by 2 touchdowns or so. So I don't think it's crazy to think that South Carolina could cover that. I think, 13, 14, 15 seems about right, just given the way these two teams played, because the big question is going to be, how does South Carolina score enough to probably keep within striking distance, even if their defense wins some of the battles? Because I do think their defense could at least keep this one closer early on.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. 2 weeks to prepare.
Yeah.
Trap game? All right, no, I'm just kidding. All right, I'm not allowed to say A&M's playing a trap game anymore. Hey, shout out Jimmy Shepard. He just became a member. Steven, Jimmy, welcome to
the family.
Yeah. And then Dilling. I always forget the G. Dealing with a Dylan. Stoops has as many 10-win seasons as Drink. He'll make a college football playoff too, ? This Cats fan thing. Man, isn't it wild, Steve? We're all back in on Stoopsy here, which, hey, give him his flowers. They whooped Florida. But will Kentucky make a playoff with Stoops? I find that hard to believe. What do you think?
I find it a little bit hard to believe, but I think it's also worth pointing out that they had 2 top 15 finishes in the coaches poll and a number 12 finish in the Associated Press poll under Stoops. So if you're just taking kind of like a holistic historical view of where they've been able to get Kentucky, that's the range you need to get to be a playoff team. Now that's happened only twice. You need to happen a little bit more frequently. But maybe to answer his question, and I think it's kind of funny to see that, just given like where the fan base seemed to be a couple weeks ago, and now that they've had these wins over Auburn and Florida, like the whole momentum has changed because they got a decent shot to get bowl eligible. I think the rest of the year, because suddenly that Louisville game looks a lot more gettable. But maybe what we said about Missouri also applies here, Mike, is that let's just say you get the right pieces in place, you get a favorable schedule, maybe you pick off a Louisville at the end of the year that's ranked, maybe you beat somebody in non-conference play that's pretty good, you get to 10-2, we are at 16 teams. I don't think it's crazy. On the list of possibilities, I think Stoops and Kentucky getting to the playoff would be on the lower end for me, but I think the blueprint's kind of there, if that makes sense.
You're right. It's crazy. All right. How about this one, Steven? Speaking of what would have been crazy a year or two ago, but actually could happen here, we got Vanderbilt marching a step closer to the college football playoff. It's hard to believe they beat Auburn. I know I expected them to beat Auburn, but I certainly didn't expect 45-38. I would have said, well, what did they only score 10 in regulation and we went to 20 overtimes or something here? But what was your thoughts on Vanderbilt advancing to 8-2 and Auburn falling to 4-6?
Mike, this game played out nothing like I think either of us thought, because on paper it looked like it's going to play out a lot like Missouri and Vanderbilt, which was kind of lower scoring, maybe kind of a rock fight. It started out weird too. Of course, we had some pregame tensions between these two teams. And, going into this game, I thought, okay, Auburn's offense has struggled. You kind of figure maybe they get a spark from removing Hugh Freeze. But in nowhere did I see Ashton Daniels delivering this performance. But let's give Auburn's offense some credit that they finally figured out that they have two good receivers in Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. These guys need to touch the ball, 7, 8, 10 times a game. So a lot of credit to Derek Nix and this offensive staff for, making tweaks, doing changes, whatever it is, to be able to put Auburn in a position to win. But I think the real story of this game is Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. Mike, you and I talked about on the Wednesday show last week, the difference in the game I thought would be Diego Pavia. 6 touchdown drives on their last 8 possessions after falling behind. And once again, it's the passing game at Pavia. And we saw this against Texas in the second half. It was that way too against Auburn, plus over 100 rushing yards. I mean, if Pavia doesn't get to New York at this point for the Heisman Trophy, I don't know what we're doing. I mean, he's one of the most valuable players in college football. He's one of the best. His performance, few timely stops down the stretch on defense, that keeps Vanderbilt's playoff hopes alive for another week. So credit to Vanderbilt for finding ways to win in very challenging circumstances with the coaching change at Auburn, but also after falling behind in a game where they had to have it.
Yeah, someone in the comments on last night's show, they said, well, heck, Diego Pavia, I mean, statistically, he's not even that good of a quarterback. And I'm like, what in the hell are we talking about here? He's completion percentage and passing touchdowns. He's one in the SEC. He's third in passing yards. Heck, he's number 9 in rushing yards. You know what I mean? So, again, statistics, I don't believe in just go straight off the statistics. I think that's foolish. But I think more importantly, he has elevated this program. Even this program, Stephen, that when they are hosting Auburn, seems like only half the stadium is their people. I mean, we are still at this point, and Auburn is I think they're on better footing now, obviously, but they were a train wreck of a program as far as a week ago under that idiot coach, but they still got great fans, right, that travel. The point being is Vanderbilt can't even sell out their stadium to their fans, yet they are 2 games away from making the college football playoff. And it's not all because of Diego. I'm not saying he's Cam Newton or anything, but he's given that team belief. You said it yourself, what was it? 6 touchdowns in the final 8 possessions after being down. And their defense was a train wreck. in this football game. So, yeah, I mean, it's the hate for this guy is incredible. And I know he brings a little bit on himself, but I love Johnny Manziel. I love Cam Newton. And, I like these guys. Joe Burrow, same, maybe not exactly the same, but that guy talked a lot of trash too. But the thing is, these guys back it up. And Diego Pavia is about to have Vanderbilt much, much closer. I think, of course, Steven doesn't believe in him. We'll get to that here in a minute. But no, I think there's a real shot that Vanderbilt makes college football playoff if they go 10-2. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Mike. I think if Vanderbilt's 10-2, they have a very, 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 very good chance to be in the playoff. And I think we'll have a better idea after this week because Texas getting Georgia and Oklahoma getting Alabama, and then we'll see what the committee does with those results. Let's just say both those two teams lose, but maybe they win out. How do you compare a 9-3 Texas team that has a head-to-head win over 10-2 Vanderbilt? That's going to be something that is going to be fascinating for the committee to kind of sift through. But I think the bigger point here is if Vanderbilt goes 10-2, they are either in the playoff field or they are the first or the second team out of the field. So it is still all there for them. And Mike, on Pavia specifically, I think he's one of those players that is really hard to put a statistical value on. And also from the schematics of the offense. And we think about so many quarterbacks that have played at lower conferences or other ones, like they throw it 50 times a game, but that doesn't mean they deserve the Heisman Trophy. But just think about where Vanderbilt was pre-Pavia and post-Pavia. Also, Pavia has more passing yards than Heisman frontrunner Fernando Mendoza has this season. I know Indiana's played a lot of blowouts, but if you talk about value to the team, improvement over the last 2 seasons, sometimes player performance overcomes the box score, and I think that's the case here with Pavia. He should absolutely be a Heisman finalist at this point.
Michael Dunlap says he needs to join the workforce. Even though Michael Dunlap's starting 2 running backs, or not starting 2, but number 1 and number 2 on the depth chart are older than Pavia. And shout out Joey Aguilar. He's the same age as Pavia. I don't know why no one talks about that, but they don't.
Pavia is going to be an interesting NFL draft or maybe like CFL case. I think he could be a pretty fun player if he goes to play in the CFL.
I love, as you know, talking trash about Hugh Freeze, so I'm going to let you do it. Was it any more of an indictment? I mean, how could it possibly be any more of a big of an indictment that this offense that scored 3 points in a loss to Kentucky turns around and scores 38 and utilizes all these great weapons they have?
Yeah, Mike, it is a huge indictment because this offense, I mean, I know Vanderbilt has some question marks, especially we've talked about it in the secondary this season, but it did feel like this offense had a little bit better flow. I thought they had pretty good, tempo at times. And also the fact that Ashton Daniels looked not very good one week and then turned it around to throw for 353 yards. Also, I mentioned it, like Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. Why are these guys not getting 10 catches a week? Just throw it on bubbles. Do whatever you got to do to get it in their hands. So, Mike, complete mismanagement of the offense. For that offense to be that better in 1 week, I think just it makes me think even less of Hugh Freeze as a head coach because this was possible and that was what we were putting on the field a couple weeks ago. That it was pathetic.
Yeah, I didn't know we could get a lesser opinion, but we did. And shout out Michael Dunlap, comment of the night. Well, he says, well, hell, those running backs, they can join the workforce too. We can't run the damn ball. Shout out Freedom Van. He says, hey, I think Vandy would beat Indiana. One trick pony. I'd love to see it. Speaking of things I love to see, Steven, how about me looking like an idiot yet again? Because them dogs went down to Starkville and just ran all over Mississippi State, 41-21. And it's looking like the dogs are rounding into shape at the perfect time and are eyeing another playoff run. What was your thoughts on this?
Well, Mike, put me in the idiot category as well, because I thought Georgia would win, but I thought this game would be a lot closer. So shame on me for looking at the track record of Georgia this season of playing games close. And of course, Mississippi State in Starkville as well. But man, it didn't start out that way. I thought Mississippi State on that first drive, they went down and scored. And I thought, oh, okay, we're in for this game we talked about that's going to be close. But Mike, I think the biggest thing to take away is this Georgia team really does seem to be rounding into form. Love the way that Mike Bobo is calling this offense. I know that may not be a popular thing, but I think he's done a nice job. Over 300 rushing yards, really solid play out of Gunnar Stockton. You saw all the weapons show up, whether it was Branch or some of those other receivers. And then I love the way the defense came out after that first drive, really took control of this game. So a game that had potential to be a trap game, the fact that Georgia won by 20 points and Mississippi State tacked on a couple, touchdowns in the second half when the game wasn't really in question. I think the score probably wasn't indicative of how Georgia really dominated on Saturday.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mike Bobo and the way he's engineering the offense. Gunnar Stockton, very, very efficient. How far do you think Georgia can go? Do you think they are good enough with, they're playing a lot of young players. Do you think this is a team capable of winning the national championship?
I think so. I think number one, I think being battle tested in the SEC. I mean, look at some of the games that Indiana has played this year. And not trying to pick on Indiana, but I mean, credit to them for finding a way to win at Penn State. But Georgia, every week, if they get into these close games, and you think that you get deeper into the playoff, you'll play those kind of games. You're already battle tested. Also, I think part notable that Gunnar Stockton is first in the SEC in quarterback rating if you just look at conference games this season. So you combine maybe him getting better, which I think he is over the course of the season. Also defensively, it's like you just trust Kirby Smart in these matchups. The offensive line's kind of getting to better, the way they can run the ball and shorten it, play good defense. I know maybe this isn't the dominant Georgia defense that won national titles, but it's also still pretty salty. So this Georgia team really has all the ingredients, I think, to win the national title this year.
Hey, dealing with Dylan. He's got another one for us, Stephen. Crime of the century. Mike's got Auburn over Kentucky in the power rankings. Put the dollars on UK to cover versus new Nashville State. What's your thought? I realize that Auburn lost to Kentucky at home, but that was in the Hugh Freeze era, Stephen. If we were to line up DJ Durkins, Auburn, today against Mark Stoops, Kentucky on a neutral field, who would you take to win the game?
I would take Auburn. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Case closed.
I mean, didn't that look like a different Auburn team, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was what we thought was the team they could be in the preseason. You know what?
Yeah. If they had gotten that offensive production a couple times this year, I mean, Hugh Freeze is probably still the coach. And we're probably talking about a team that's got maybe 2-3 more wins, maybe. I think it's fair.
I think they would have certainly beaten Missouri. They would have beaten Kentucky. I think there's a chance they would have beaten Georgia. You got to remember they were up 10-0 with that putrid offense. I think so. I mean, yeah.
I'm probably sitting there like 7-3, maybe losses to Oklahoma, A&M, and one of these, one of the other games in there. But I mean, that was such a different offense compared to what we saw in the first 9 games of the season. It's like I said, it's hard to look at that. And I know Vanderbilt's got some issues on defense right now, but it was hard to watch that game on Saturday and go, what if, and wonder how much Hugh Freeze is really dragging down this offense this season.
Emily says 9 out of 10 times. Oh, Hugh Freeze logic there. You know what?
Well, he was right. They were close. So he just needed to remove himself, right?
Yeah. That cloud. All right. How about, man, any concern, or is it just a nice win over I guess we're not allowed to call this a rivalry either, but Alabama beats LSU 20-9. And the concern for me, Stephen, is just Alabama's looked a little sloppy here lately. Now, they're winning. That's all that really matters. But, just keep those wins coming. But they just don't look, to me, quite like the dominating team I thought they were about 3 weeks ago. Where are you at with that?
It's a good question. I kind of had the same thought, I guess, watching that game on Saturday, because I thought maybe we'd see a little bit of a sharper, kind of crisper effort, especially off the off week. I do think credit to LSU at least for not throwing in the towel. I thought Frank Wilson had those guys ready to play. The fact that this series has been, uh, I don't want to call it a rivalry, but it's been a pretty spirited series. I kind of expected LSU to show some fight. I just thought Alabama might put their foot down in the second half and kind of pull away. So, Mike, I kind of expected a little bit better from Alabama, but still, it's a win in SEC play, and they're just moving closer to their goals. I do think there are a few things to be worried about for Alabama, but I think we see this time in and time out this season that the difference in these games has been Ty Simpson. And that was really one of the biggest advantages for me on Saturday, was just seeing every time Alabama needed a play, Ty Simpson showed up in the clutch. And so that combination can carry Alabama a long way while they kind of figure out some of these questions that still kind of hang over this team.
Mm-hmm. But at some point, do you think it catches up with them that, again, it's working, so it's kind of odd to sit here and critique it, but in lieu of a running game, they're kind of they're using the pass as the running game too. You know what?
That is my biggest concern for Alabama, is the lack of a running game right now. I don't think you have to have total 50-50 balance, and sometimes it's almost the threat of the run can set up a lot. If you have a successful run game, you can maybe do a little bit more off play action. It slows some of that pass rush down. The reason why I think that's important is thinking about the playoff, because you might run into, like in Ohio State, you might run into Georgia again, maybe in the SEC championship game, Georgia or Texas A&M or somebody, and you're in a tight game and you need to convert a couple third downs to run the clock out and win. And so I think it is that's my biggest concern about this team going forward is, can they get a little bit more out of Jam Miller? Do they need to go to somebody else? How do they get a little bit more production to help take some of that pressure off of Ty Simpson? Because it is going to be tough, I think, to ask him to bail out this offense every week if they keep playing close games. Georgia's done it, but also feels like Georgia's got a little bit better balance when stocked in the run game. Need to see a little bit more out of Alabama's rushing attack.
Yeah, man, that's a really great point, Stephen. Again, that's why you're here, for all this great knowledge. But yeah, because Bama looks really good when they go like 2 minute, they spread you out and they throw it. But yeah, I guess the elite competition, a couple weeks in a row, you may be able to get away with that a time or two. But the teams that win the championship generally, it's when they have to run the ball and the opponent knows they're going to run it and you can't stop them.
Yeah, and think about Kalen DeBoer when he was at Washington and the season that they played for the national championship. They didn't have like an prolific rushing attack, but they were at least able to average over 4 yards per carry. They had like a 1,000-yard rusher that season. So, I don't think that Alabama needs to have a 100-yard rusher every week, but I don't think you can be rushing for 50 something yards. And especially you think about that game Saturday. I mean, LSU's had no kind of rhythm, no flow on offense all year. But what if you do run into Texas A&M in the SEC championship game? I mean, heck, even Oklahoma this week. I mean, suddenly a resurgent Auburn offense in a few weeks. I mean, the margin for error is pretty small, absent finding some more balance. And I think that was an emphasis, it seemed like, in the bye week, but they still need more out of this group.
Yeah. Yes, they do. And now, the only exception would be, of course, LSU, they had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so it wasn't like they couldn't run. But I was thinking 2019 LSU. But again, that was prolific quarterback, prolific receivers. As good as Alabama is, I don't think that's quite a gap between Ty Simpson and Joe Burrow. You know what?
Yeah, it's tough to top Joe Burrow and those receivers. That's one of the greatest offenses that college football has seen. This Alabama offense is up there, Mike, and I think if the rushing attack stays like it is, I think they'll go far. But I think, it's like it's almost like a first world problem for this team, because it's not trying to pick apart, say they're not any good. It's just that if they want to win a national championship, I think it's things like that. I think we saw the pass rush too at times, like Pierre getting involved on Saturday night. We saw Overton, like those guys, like on the margins, there's some things that they got to figure out. But figuring those things out probably means Alabama goes from like the semifinals to maybe playing for the national championship. So I think that's the stakes. It's not trying to figure out like, is Alabama any good or not. I think it's like, what's the ceiling for this team?
Hey, and again, way off topic here, but you got me distracted when you were talking about Washington. I believe their running back was Dylan Johnson, who came from Mississippi State. And then their other running back, I can't think of his name, but I think he transferred to Southern Cal to play for Lincoln Riley. But man, Mike Leach, he was a crazy bastard, but that guy knew football, and he had an eye for talent, didn't he?
He really did. Yeah, Woody Marks and Dylan Johnson. That was a heck of a backfield in Starkville, and also, Woody's playing on Sundays now with the Texans. So yeah,
wow,
comparing.
Hey, shout out Michael Dunlap, Stephen. He renewed. Michael, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, appreciate you, Michael. All right, oh, buddy. We haven't much talked much about this, have we? But we did hit on it briefly with the Stoops conversation. But man, what a travesty here for the Florida Gators. And maybe this is the case, Stephen. I know he was not popular. They were booing his ass. Get Napier out of here. But maybe this is the case for not firing your coach, because it seems like they kind of rolled over here in Lexington.
That absolutely holds true, Mike, because one of the things that we've seen is like when these coaches get fired, it's like the bottom has to drop out. And even if you have a coach on the hot seat, if a team is playing well enough, even if they're losing, you don't want to get rid of him. It used to be because of the portal, but it's also like you see performances like this. I mean, Mike, I guess we should have seen this coming, right? Mark Stoops is motivated. Maybe Florida wasn't motivated. Kentucky was very motivated on Saturday night, because, Mike, that was a ugly, ugly game at times with all the turnovers. But the bottom line is Kentucky still fighting despite all that's happened this year. The physicality that they won with, over 200 rushing yards, some solid play at a Cutter Boley too. I mean, I don't want to use the word quit, but Kentucky certainly, I think, was in control of this game in the second half over Florida.
Yeah, the only team in the conference, Stephen, this weekend that did not punt the football was the Kentucky Wildcats. How about that?
There you go. See, it just took Mark Stoops 8 games or so to find his rhythm.
And if you would have said that about one team, I would have assumed it would have been Ole Miss beating Citadel 49-0. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this one, but did you have any thoughts on Ole Miss just kind of taking care of business against the Citadel?
Mike, I think that's exactly the takeaway. And it sounds stupid, but it's like, just take care of business, win the game, move one step closer to the college football playoff, finish the job. And that's exactly what Ole Miss did on Saturday with that 49-0 victory. I know it's, the Citadel really didn't present a lot of threats, but because they run the option, these FCS teams, they can be hard to prepare for. So I just think it was good for Ole Miss to jump out early, don't have a repeat of Washington State, and basically just taking care of business. And don't want to use the word lock, but they're right there on the doorstep. They beat Florida this weekend. They're pretty darn close to being a playoff lock at this point.
Right. Well, you keep alluding to the playoff and lock, so we got to tackle that here in a second. But I do want to give a shout out to Idahoan Aggie. Idahoan, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, thank you, brother, for joining the family. All right, Stephen. So we went through all the games, and like I said, you keep referencing the playoff. So I'm gonna mix up my talking points here. I was gonna do panic meter, but we'll do panic meter after the SC. So these are Stephen's updated SEC playoff projections. I think most of you are going to like them. One fan base surely will not, as well as the updated bowl talk. But here we go. Steven, he hates Vanderbilt, despite all the nice things he said about Diego Pavia. He's got Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and mighty Texas in the college football playoff. What did Vanderbilt ever do to you, Steven? You've got them relegated to the Citrus Bowl against Michigan, ReliaQuest, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Duke Mayo Bowl, drink the Mayo bath might be worth it right there. Missouri, Virginia, Music City Bowl, LSU, Minnesota, Gator Bowl, Tennessee, Miami, and then the Texas Bowl, Mississippi State, TCU. Thoughts on, let's start with your playoff team, Stephen. Why these five and why five in general?
Mike, I think you feel pretty good about the SEC at least getting 4 teams in at this point, and Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M in very good shape. They have margin for error, and they also have some big-time matchups coming up to solidify or maybe move up the standings. And I think when we think about the rankings coming up this week, I think it is going to be interesting to see what the committee does with Texas A&M, because to me, they're closing in on the number 2 ranking potentially over Indiana. So I think those 4 you feel good about. The 5th spot and potentially a 6th spot is kind of up in the air. And that's where I had a hard time this week with the projections, because we saw the chaos that happened in the ACC. They might be fortunate to get 1 team in if a bunch of other chaos happens. The Big 12, Texas Tech beat BYU. In other words, probably only getting 1 team in. Notre Dame also solidly in the field right now. So I think the scenario that's setting up is, can Texas split the 2 games, Georgia, Texas A&M, get to 9-3, and they have that head-to-head win over Vanderbilt, which puts them in the field. So for now, that's kind of the scenario I'm going with. Texas finds a way. They beat either Georgia or A&M. They get in the field. The other scenario is Oklahoma losing to Alabama. Heck, if they win, they're locked in. But if Oklahoma goes 9-3, strength of schedule on their side, I could see Oklahoma making the field at 9-3 if Texas is at 8-4. So I think the scenario that we're seeing play out is ACC 1 team, Big 12 1 team, Notre Dame's in. Big 10, if Michigan beats Ohio State, that's maybe another spot for Michigan to get in there. But that also might drag Oklahoma in over the finish line too. So what I'm getting at, Mike, is there's a lot of scenarios that could play out for that 5th or 6th spot. Right now, I think Texas, if they win out, they're in. If they split, they at least have a chance. And the split that I'm talking about is Georgia and Texas A&M.
Right. Okay. No, that all makes sense. I did want to throw you this, because again, this is going to sound crazy, but it could happen. Shout out to Mike Rodak. I believe he works for 24/7 Sports. But thought about this, Stephen. A&M, let's say they go 11-1. With that would mean beating Carolina, beating Sanford. I think we all believe that'll likely happen. And then a loss at Texas. Again, is that going to happen? I don't know, but that's believable. Ole Miss 11-1. That would mean beating Florida, and they're nearly a 20-point favorite, and winning at Mississippi State. Not a given, but they will be favored in that game as well. Alabama this weekend, let's say they go 10-2, lose to Bama, but beat Auburn and the Blue Panthers here. So, again, is that believable? Certainly. Georgia losing to Texas, but beating Georgia Tech and Charlotte. Come on, get it. We all know they're going to beat Charlotte. Then Texas. Texas would have to win out. That's certainly not a given. That may be the most difficult one here, or if not Oklahoma beating Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. I think Missouri and LSU certainly are beatable, but at Alabama, that's a tall task. And then Vanderbilt beating Kentucky and Tennessee. Not a given, but to me, that's realistic as well. What would happen here, Stephen, in this insane scenario?
Can we find room for all of them to get in the playoff at that point? Mike, I think the one concern that you have for Vanderbilt, and this is why I did not have them in this week, is first of all, they have good losses to Texas and Alabama. Best win, probably LSU, Missouri, but they're both probably going to fall out of the top 25 for the committee. LSU wasn't in last week. Missouri was. I think that if they beat Tennessee, of course, that could be a top 25 win, depending on what happens with Tennessee. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think the strength of schedule is on Vanderbilt's side. I think what helps them is that 10 beside their number there. And so getting to 10-2 has kind of been the magic number so far in the 12-team playoff era. But I think Vanderbilt would probably be at the bottom of that because of strength of schedule. You look at, if Texas goes 10-2 by beating Georgia and A&M, I don't think you can leave them out. I don't think you can leave out Georgia. And then, of course, Oklahoma beating Alabama. I don't know how you leave them out either. So it kind of seems like Vanderbilt kind of loses that head-to-head, which is why they probably need some 9-3, 8-4s out of these teams that are still in the mix to make the playoff.
Now, this could be crazy, Stephen. You tell me, because I honestly don't know. What is Florida State's record right now?
They are 4 and I think it's 5.
Okay, well,
4 and 5. Yeah.
For Alabama's sake, they better win a game or two here, because that is one of the metrics they look at is bad losses. And what is a bad loss, you may ask? A loss to a team with a losing record. And that's essentially what kept Ole Miss out of the playoff last year, losing to Kentucky. So, having said that, could that, in this wild scenario, which again, this is probably not going to happen, but not totally unrealistic either, I don't know that anyone else on this list would have a bad loss as defined by the committee, not by me, but defined by the committee. Could that maybe be something that kicks Bama out of here?
Texas losing to Florida too. That's
shit.
That's probably
think about that.
That's probably a bad loss. Yeah.
Come on, Gators! They got to win out here for Texas. You know what?
I think it's one of those losses that if you think about it, like it's in Gainesville, it's a different Florida team probably at that point than the end of the season. Then they showed up on Kentucky. It's like if you're on the committee, you could go, okay, the circumstances are a little different. You could also make that case too with Florida State. It's the first game of the season, and they had a new offensive, new defensive scheme. Maybe they caught Alabama off guard. I think that's kind of the things that I would want the committee to take into account. It's not an excuse. It's like you're looking at this going, when did Alabama lose to Florida State, and what was the circumstances around it? Like, what's the circumstances on, an injury for like Mateer, and trying to weigh those things. So, in that scenario, do you agree with me that Vanderbilt's strength of schedule might be a little bit of a hurdle for them?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but man, it would seem like such a shame to leave a 10-2 Vanderbilt out. I wouldn't do it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I would say this is the best Vanderbilt team ever. They have a Heisman candidate at quarterback. They deserve to go. Because, I mean, I know the Alabama score's lopsided. That was a close game. Bama scored late. Vanderbilt turned it over twice in Alabama's red zone. And then, I think Alabama was closer than Texas. Even though Texas was a 3-point game, Texas kind of dominated that one. But so I guess maybe I'm kind of going against my argument here. But I don't know. I just don't see how you'd leave a 10-2 Vanderbilt out.
I should say, when it comes to like strength of schedule, and I think Vanderbilt by one metric is 21st nationally in strength of schedule. And so it's not a bad strength of schedule. I think the problem is when you compare it to some of the others, that's where they may run into. For instance, Alabama is 6th in this metric for strength of schedule. Oklahoma is 16th. And so it's a little bit on the margins, but if you do get into one of these conversations, I think that's where it may hurt them. So that's the only reason why I have concerns about Vanderbilt getting in. I think they may need a little bit of help. But Mike, one thing I would point out, kind of a quirk in the bowl projections too, is Michigan, if they don't beat Ohio State, is probably headed to the Citrus Bowl. Oklahoma played Michigan earlier this year. They play again next year. I don't think they'd get matched up a third time. So if Texas is in the playoff field and Vanderbilt beats Tennessee, they could end up playing in one of the best non-playoff bowl games out there. Should also note too, Mike, I mean, I think one of the other storylines as we get into this stretch run for November is teams that are outside the playoff, like a Tennessee. What do they have left in the tank? Because Tennessee could easily beat Vanderbilt in a few weeks, and this conversation means, absolutely nothing. So it's the stakes are incredibly high for Vanderbilt going into that game, and I still think Tennessee is going to finish out the season on a high note. It's all there for Vanderbilt, but I think they may need a little bit of help to get in.
Hey, a little off topic here, but I wanted to honor his donation here, Stephen. We had dealing with Dylan. Man, we appreciate you tonight, Dylan. He gave us $20, Stephen. Kentucky has one of the best front sevens in the conference. Y'all ignore Mark Stoops, who whooped USC, LSU, UF, and UL for 6 years. Didn't forget how to coach. We had a culture problem. The last couple years, seeing that vintage Stoops again win out. How likely do you think? First of all, do you agree with him? One of the best front sevens, and likelihood that Kentucky wins out, which would mean beating undefeated Tennessee Tech. Just throwing that out there. At Vanderbilt, at Louisville.
I think on the defensive front, Mike, I think they've gotten better over the course of the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but again, I mean, this is like we're living in an era where we just remember what just happened 5 minutes ago, right? So, I mean, Florida quit. I don't know anybody that watched that doesn't think that. Hugh Freeze is the worst coach in the SEC since Chad Morris, and then I watched Tennessee put up 56 on them. So it's one thing to sit here and say, well, hell, we beat Florida and Auburn, but elite defense just gave up 56 to Tennessee. I don't know if I'm buying that.
I mean, last year, Kentucky gave up 6 yards of play in SEC games. I don't think Stoops forgot how to coach. I think Stoops is one of the coaches that has maybe struggled during this era of college football, because I think in the old era, there would be like a 3 to 4 year window where he could develop guys. And I think now I think this offseason is kind of like, we got to get guys who could come in and play right away. And so I think the shift from high school to portal has created a lot of challenges for some of these coaches like Stoops and Brad White too. I think pretty highly of Brad White as a coordinator. I think very underrated nationally. I think on their bowl hopes, Mike, I think the odds of them getting to a bowl game have increased significantly the last couple of weeks. Number one, got to be a pretty good Tennessee Tech team this week. And then the Vanderbilt game, which I think is probably, I would argue, is probably their biggest hurdle. Louisville, recently has kind of handled Kentucky, but at the same time, though, Louisville lost to California on Saturday. Louisville's offense has been very up and down. You could easily see a very, not to use a bad word, motivated Kentucky team beating Louisville in the finale to get that 6th win. I think it's doable, much more doable than a few weeks ago.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I do like to see, and again, it's, man, this is going to sound bad. Like I'm just messing with Dylan here. But the fact that Mark Stoops or whoever, I mean, it's got to fall on Mark Stoops, but running with Calzada to start the season, that was idiotic. And it's not like this came out of nowhere. Cutter Boley played a little bit last year, and I thought he looked solid for a freshman. And then all reports all off season was he looked like the future. But what they would say was like he's not ready, and I guess, because it has since come out they paid Calzada $1.5 million.
We saw.
Imagine, where else that could have been. I mean, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Hindsight's 20/20, but that could have got us probably 2 big time receivers or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it's not only giving him the money, it's starting him over Cutter Boley. That just looks dumber by the day.
I think the argument on Calzada could be, you have to win now, and he had already been through the SEC, put up big numbers at Incarnate Word, and I think it made sense to go get an experienced quarterback. But I think I saw enough out of Boley last year to say I want to see more of him, and see more of him as a starter over the full allotment of snaps. Also, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, it felt like these two quarterbacks were pretty close in the fall. And it's like, if you're close, the tie should always go to the younger quarterback, because if he plays, the upside is probably greater. So I think that if Boley does hit, it's actually a good thing for Stoops, and assuming he's back next year, is that they've had this cycle of got to take a transfer. It's not necessarily bad, but at some point, if you can break the cycle and use that money around him, you're going to end up being better off.
And I don't know how many players truly think this way, unfortunately, but I wonder if Kentucky can get any kind of discount, not a major discount, like people are not going to just show up to, but the fact that they do have a good quarterback, I think that would be attractive to receivers and tight ends in the portal, because they have more confidence that they can get production getting teamed with Cutter Boley. Again, how much of an advantage is that? I don't truly know. You're not going to get Cam Coleman, because he's probably going to make an ungodly amount of money. You know what I mean? But again, there's so many probably good players out there that are not going to command a high dollar like that Kentucky can pay for, but not overpay. And maybe, I think that's a reality as well.
Oh, sorry. I was dreaming of Arch Manning throwing touchdowns to Cam Coleman next year. I think you're right about Cutter Boley, and then being able to build a team around him. It's always easier to track talent out of the portal if you know who your guy is at quarterback. And also if it's to some extent it can be, I wouldn't say this is necessarily a fun offense, but if you got a good offense and you got a good quarterback, receivers want to go to where they're going to get the ball. And so they don't have to go somewhere it's a question. They know if Boley ends up being good next year, they can attract some receiver talent. So yeah, I would expect it, if depending on how this works out, I think Boley could be a solution, and also they can really build around him next year.
Hey, what's your thoughts on this one from Dane? He gave us a donation here, Stephen. Texas more likely to go 7-5 than 10-2, and that's an interesting question. Now, I believe Dane's a Sooner, so there may be some bias here. But again, I think I would have to say, this may sound crazy, Stephen, but I will disagree with him. I winning at Georgia and beating A&M, I don't know they can do either one of those, but I'm pretty damn confident they're going to smoke Arkansas.
I don't know how Arkansas's defense stops Texas. I think that's my biggest hurdle. Certainly last year's game was close in Fayetteville, so it wouldn't surprise me if they get a pretty feisty game out of Arkansas, especially, we see Taylor Green can really kind of be the one-man show enough to make it a 4-quarter game. I think it's going to be hard to go 10-2. I think if you want to make the argument, and I would probably say more likely 10-2 than 7-5, but certainly I think fair question. If you want to make the argument that they get to 10-2, I think you could talk yourself into, okay, this Texas team, the last maybe 6-7 quarters has really found its identity. They've got the right offensive line. Arch is playing better. We know their defense is good. You get Texas A&M at home. You got to figure Georgia's going to be a close game. They could find a way to steal it. So, and it kind of gets at the playoff thing, is like, I really think, given what's happened in other conferences, and I'm going to throw Oklahoma in here too. I think if Oklahoma loses close to Alabama and they win out, I think at 9-3, both Oklahoma and Texas absolutely will be in the conversation to make the playoff, or they will be the first team out. And people may think that's crazy, Mike, but you look at the other conferences and go, who the heck is going to make this thing? You got to have somebody in there. And I think both those teams are viable.
Yeah, apologies. Dane is an Aggie. Oh. I should not have made that grievous mistake. I prefer it when you guys have your team logo in here so I can tell. But now, if he had said See, again, he's saying 7-5 more than likely than 10-2, which I will disagree with. If he had said 8-4 more likely than 10-2, 1,000%, I would say. I'm not saying that's going to happen either, 8-4, but that to me is more likely than winning at Georgia and A&M, both of them. You know what? You see what I'm saying?
I would agree with that. If 8-4, I think is probably more likely than going 10-2, just given that schedule. Hard to see. I mean, weird things happen in college football, but I think it's kind of hard to see Texas losing to Arkansas this year.
Right. Unless Bobby Petrino rides again and he saves. No, I'm just kidding. Get the hell out of here with that. You know what?
So no full-time Bobby Petrino coming. If Bobby Petrino wins that game, though, you know it.
Yeah, they're putting out. I don't know if you've seen this. The Little Rock Touchdown Club. They always have the guests come in there. They're like, you know who needs his job? Bobby Petrino. I'm like, okay, like we're still doing this. Okay, maybe he's got to lose every game before we can move on from Bobby. I don't know. It was always like, well, what if he goes 6-2? Well, what if he goes 5-3? Should he be considered? Well, he's losing all these games. If he loses LSU, yeah, they're probably going to lose all these damn games, and there's still going to be crazy people calling for him to keep the job.
You know what's going to happen is they're going to lose the next two, and then they're going to beat Missouri. And then it's like going to say, see, they're finally 6 games in. Petrino is ready to ride, and they've got this team on a high note finishing. So it seems like a long shot to me at this point. I think it would have helped when you had winnable games against Auburn and Mississippi State to win those, and then maybe you can pick off an LSU or Missouri, and all of a sudden you're like in the bowl conversation. Like that makes a little bit more sense, but it's going to be a hard sell, despite his offensive wizardry to sell Bobby Petrino if they go 2-10, which is not crazy at this point.
Hey, and thank you, Junior, for the donation. Thank you to all the veterans, especially this week. We appreciate you. Thank you, Junior. That was a very thoughtful donation and obviously an important message.
Yeah, appreciate you, Junior. Thanks for that great message too.
And speaking of great messages, Steve, I didn't know how else to transition from that. But shout out this week, Stephen. We are presented by Hollow Socks. Stephen, Christmas right around the corner. You know what? If you are looking for one great gift idea for someone that you care about, or maybe you just want to get yourself some compression socks, go check them out. HollowSocks.com right now. They're giving a special promotion, 50% off, Stephen, all the socks. So go check them out. Hollow Socks, not even a promo code or anything. Go check them out. HollowSocks.com, 50% off, limited time. Buy 3, get 3 for free. Can't beat it. And they sent us over some of these fantastic socks, Stephen. We got the ankle. This for like if you're doing athletic stuff. Crew. Whoop, I dropped the crew, so you'll see it later. And then here's the boot. This is the one you pull all the way up your dang leg like Papaw used to do it. But I love the fact that they got different varieties over here at hollowsocks.com, so go check them out. Here it is right here. The crew. I'm going to send Steven some crew because that'll cool him off this holiday season. You know what?
Pull up those socks on Pat Ball's leg and hear stories of Hugh Freeze's good offense at Ole Miss, right?
Pat Ball members, you know what?
I will say, those are those compression socks. I could strongly endorse those. Like if you're like a workout fiend like I am, those do help a little bit in recovery. So Hollow Socks might be getting some visits from the Lassan household very soon. Yeah,
but the compression, they got Hunt, they got trade socks, they got them all over there. So go check them out. HollowSocks.com, 50% off your order. Check them out. All right, speaking of check them out, Stephen, I am eager to check out your panic meter. Who are you panicking the most about this week in the SEC?
Well, first of all, I think we need to have a little talk about panic because I was panicked for Mike on Saturday when I was watching the Texas A&M Missouri game.
Boop.
And I was watching the Kentucky game thinking, man, he's going to get a game on me in the standings. And he sure did. But Mike, we got to talk about these upsets and the bets. Like, I applaud you for doing it, my friend, but I'm sure the anxiety level was pretty high on Saturday after watching that A&M game, right?
Oh, yes, indeed. I don't think I was sweating near as much as Shane since I roped him in to the Aggie yell dance. Apparently it's not a dance, but seems kind of dancey to me. But yeah, I don't think he'd appreciated me roping him into that. And A for effort, though, there, Shane, on the video. I tried to go all out for it, but it wasn't as bad. I do appreciate how many A&M fans, they were like, man, now that we've seen you do this dance, it is pretty weird. You know, like that's the highest compliment I think I could get.
Well, I applaud you for putting yourself out there for doing it, my friend. But my panic meter for you was level 10 on Saturday. Was that safe for you, like level 10?
Oh yeah. Certainly Saturday, Sunday was quite I was going to say entertaining. I don't think entertaining is the right word, but getting blasted all over by social media by Georgia fans, A&M fans, even former A&M media people threatening to fight me. Yeah, it was quite the time to be alive. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, man, that was a weird weekend of picks, wasn't it? Oh man, this weekend's like I said, this weekend's going to be fun with the big showdowns, and there could be some separation Saturday.
Well, so who else aside from our shenanigans are you panicked about here in the SEC?
How about we start with the Alabama run game, Mike? And I'm setting the panic meter pretty high. I'm going to set it at 8. And certainly, to be clear about this, it's not about how good, the Alabama, like, are they good? Like, they're very good. But I think this is a question about, can you reach the national championship game? And the way to do that's finding a little bit more balance. Like, I trust Ty Simpson and these receivers to carry this team far, but I would like to see a little bit more balance offensively as Alabama finishes up this season. If they have good balance on Saturday against Oklahoma, man, that's a big check in their direction because Oklahoma's defense is outstanding. So when I say balance, I don't mean 200 rushing yards. I just mean a little bit more, being able to get a few more yards here and there, convert short yardage situations. So a little bit worried they've been under 100 rushing yards in 2 straight weeks and just 3.2 yards per carry in SEC games. I just think it's going to be a lot to ask this formula to go to the national championship. They need a little bit more help for Ty Simpson, and that starts with a run game.
Well, I know that Auburn just got abused by Diego Pavia and company, but you're talking national championship, which you should. I mean, they're 6-0 in the conference, 8-1 overall. But we know Oklahoma's elite on the defensive line, and I believe by the analytics, I could be mistaken. It may have changed after the Vanderbilt game, but I believe Auburn entered the Vanderbilt game as the number 1 rush defense in efficiency in the country. Does that concern you that, again, I'm not saying it happens, but I'm saying it could, that Alabama could, I mean, they already can't run the football. Now going up against 2 arguably elite defenses, that they're so one-dimensional that they could possibly lose both these games and not even make the playoff?
I guess anything's still in the realm of possibility. I would be surprised, though, if Alabama missed the playoff. I do think you bring up a good point. If you were to make a list of the top defensive fronts in the SEC, Oklahoma and Auburn are probably up at the top, especially Texas probably isn't too far behind, or they're in that conversation. And they're going to get those 2 in the next couple weeks. And so this is a good test to see if Alabama can just generate a little bit more. I think Alabama could run it back, the game, the play we saw on Saturday against LSU, and they probably could win out. But I think you start thinking about, okay, if they get to Texas A&M in the SEC championship game, the ways that Texas A&M can beat you is probably going to be hard, I think, to win that game unless you have a little bit more balance. So, yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the chaos that Oklahoma can cause up front, Auburn as well, but Auburn also on the road and potentially the rivalry and also a potential much improved offense, like there's still some danger here for Alabama despite surpassing all these tests. And I should, like I said, don't want to freak any Alabama fans out. I think the question is like, are they SEC champion number 2 in the playoff rankings, or are they closer to the 8 seed? And you start to get in some really tough matchups, I think, in that 8-9 kind of range.
Right. All right. So we'll talk about Oklahoma here in just a second, but who else you got on your panic meter?
Let's talk about Vanderbilt's defense, Mike. And I'm going to set the panic meter at a 6. The only reason why I kind of set it so high is, it feels like this defense the last 2 weeks or so has been taking on a little bit more stress. Maybe that's not a bad way to put it. But they just have been playing, giving up 34 to Texas, 45 to Auburn, especially after that Missouri game. It was such a physical affair. I know this defense has some question marks in the secondary, but to see them give up 38 to Auburn and an offense that scored 3 against Kentucky was a little alarming. And they've given up 6 yards of play in 5 out of their last 6 games, back-to-back 30-point games allowed. I bring this up because they're going to get Joey Aguilar in Tennessee's offense in the last week of the season. And if you have trouble containing Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, and I think very highly of those guys, I think Joey Aguilar is a better quarterback than Ashton Daniels, and it's on the road in Knoxville, and they're going to have 3 receivers coming at them. If Vanderbilt doesn't patch this up, we can forget playoff, because they're going to have a hard time going into Knoxville and winning if this defense doesn't play better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I certainly think you're onto something there. And, they'll get kind of I think it goes Ashton Daniels, Cutter Boley, Joey Aguilar. That's a nice little progression.
Yeah.
You don't want to jump to the elite level right away. You know what I mean? So that's one way to look at it. But I don't want to take away anything from Ashton Daniels, because I thought he looked fantastic on Saturday. But I also wonder how much of that was just Auburn's receivers making just incredible plays over and over and over. And even after so what they were doing was clearly working, but they really cooled off in the second half. And again, I think the only points they scored were more insane catches by Cam Coleman in the second half. So I don't know. I think you're right to be concerned, but I'm not panicked yet, if that makes sense.
I also wonder, with all of the coaching changes, and especially when it comes to being a coordinator, we may see this with South Carolina on Saturdays. What's new? They put stuff on tape, and, Auburn had time to prepare what was different, things, and maybe Vanderbilt figured them out, which is not surprising. The other part of this is I'm just thinking, okay, it was Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. Like, if Vanderbilt's pass defense is a real issue, and it has been for most of the season, then you start thinking about Tennessee is like, regardless of whether or not Auburn caught them off guard, Tennessee's going to be a really tough challenge for a team that needs to win that game to make the playoff.
All right. So you got anyone else, Stephen, on the panic meter?
Matt Zollers. I'm going to take up for Matt Zollers a little bit. I'm going to put my panic meter at 2. And I think he's a guy, he's been in the conversation to be maybe the future quarterback for Missouri, basically third string. Really difficult circumstances, though, to play Texas A&M in your first start. Yes, it was at home. Yes, they ran for, over 200 yards. But this Texas A&M defense, top 10 in the country in success rate, one of the best secondaries by success rate in the country. I think he's going to be fine in time. It was a rough debut, but I don't want to pile on too much. I think if you're a Missouri fan, I think give him some time the rest of the year before kind of forgetting about him as maybe a quarterback of the future there.
No, maybe I will pile on, Stephen, because now if we take a step back to say Vanderbilt's defense, they made Zollers look pretty good. You might be onto something. Their defense could be in big, big trouble.
Also, LSU had success a couple weeks ago, too. So.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mizzou fans. All right, anything else on the panic meter?
Got one more for you, Mike. It's a coaching question. Kentucky, keeping Mark Stoops? I'm going to set it about 6 now. Has he saved his job?
Not according to Dylan. I mean, he's all about Stoops. They're building a statue down there. Let's see how this thing plays out. But yes, I think it is certainly trending with Cutter looking fantastic, finding ways to get wins. Heck, they had 0 SEC wins about 9 days ago. Now they got 2. That's a heck of a way to, if we get to 3, I mean, I guess that's good. But at the end of the day, what are we celebrating? 6-6?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought we had higher aspirations than this, but perhaps we don't. Perhaps if we just make a bowl game, we're happy. So, yeah, I would be kind of panicked if we're happy with this product we put on the field. I'm kind of disappointed in Kentucky.
On one side of things, I think the Texas game and the Ole Miss game, they fought in that game. They were 1-score games, and both those teams are either playoff teams or contenders right now in the case of Texas. The Florida and Auburn games are kind of outliers almost. I mean, certainly give Kentucky credit for winning, but given the circumstances, I think, like you said, I think Florida packed it in. You look at Auburn, the way that they had did some pre-planning on packing it in before Hugh Freeze was fired in that 10-3 game. Like those two games, we think you kind of have to look at them a little bit skeptically about the circumstances there. And of course, even before that, Kentucky lost 5 straight SEC games before winning those last 2. So I think the odds, I mean, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think the odds of him returning are probably helped. I don't know that it necessarily solves anything long term. Maybe it helps you don't pay a ridiculous buyout in 30 days or so. If he comes back next year, that may be the one saving thing in all this.
Yeah, perhaps. Again, I think this is totally realistic, Stephen. Again, not saying this is going to happen, but they beat Tech, and then they lose to Vanderbilt and Louisville and go 5-7. That's probably a worst case.
Yeah.
Don't you think, to try to figure out what to do, because now you're not making a bowl game? I kind of slightly lean he'd be back at 5-7, but I don't know that's. Again, I don't think that should be good enough.
I think 5-7 at least represents a step forward from last year. I think their schedule next year is actually pretty hard. I think as Alabama comes to Lexington, LSU in there as well. So, their schedule's not easy by any stretch of the imagination next year. I think 5-7 puts you kind of in almost no man's land. Like, it's a lot easier if they go 4-8. It's like, okay, we got to make the change. 6-6, hard to get rid of a coach and given the circumstances last year and also the roster setup for this season. So I think if you're a Kentucky fan and I think you want change, I think the last couple of weeks were probably a bad sign. If you're holding out hope there is, you probably need Kentucky to lose to probably Tennessee Tech on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen. Anyone else on the panic meter?
Mike, I think that's it for the panic meter this week. We panicked about coaches, run game, quarterbacks, SEC Mike, the hardest working man in the SEC, and some defense. So we covered a lot of ground there.
That we did. So let's look ahead, Stephen, to this fantastic weekend here in the SEC. And let's start with the best of the best. The 2 games here featuring top competition in the Southeastern Conference. All these teams, playoff hopes alive and well. Mighty Texas at Georgia. Stephen, what is your initial thoughts on Texas traveling to Georgia?
I can't wait for this game, Mike. A lot, from just thinking about last year's matchups and how Georgia beat up Texas in the first game. It was a little closer in the second game in the championship game, obviously, with going to overtime. But there's some nice little, nice little series starting to develop between these two teams. But of course, Mike, I think the stakes of this game are incredibly high. You've got Georgia trying to keep pace with Alabama and Texas A&M in the SEC championship race. You've got Texas desperate to keep its playoff hopes alive. And I think also two teams that are kind of trending up at this time. With Georgia's performance against Mississippi State, I think this team is rounding into form. You look at Texas, probably starting to look a lot like the team that was picked to win the national championship in the preseason. So a ton at stake, great battles in the trenches. Is the improvement on Texas or Texas offense, the Texas offensive line, is it real? Going against the Georgia front that's last in the SEC in sacks, it's almost mind-boggling. And Arch's play over the last couple of weeks has really started to pick it up. So can he go on the road and deliver a big-time win? Because they haven't played well on the road this year. And if you're Georgia, you got a chance to win and potentially knock Texas out of the playoff chase. And Mike, I think as much as there's an intrigue for me on Arch Manning, I think maybe the matchup that I'm most excited to watch is the Texas defensive front against this Georgia rushing attack. That is going to be some physical, big boy football in the trenches on Saturday night.
Which quarterback do you have more confidence heading into this matchup, Gunnar Stockton or Arch Manning?
I think it's got to be Gunnar, doesn't it? Just because of the way that Texas has played on the road this year. I think Arch is in a better place than he was like back at the Florida game and certainly the Ohio State game. And I think just looking at some of the advanced metrics, it's interesting to see Arch's average depth of target has declined a little bit the last couple of weeks. If you look at the first half of the season, it was pretty high. It's been a little bit lower. I think Sark's doing a better job of getting the ball out in space. And we see this with Ryan Wingo the last couple games, like throw it to him and let him run 60, 70 yards. So I would like to see more of that from Texas, especially early in this game to kind of ease Manning into things. But I think just based upon the games at home for Georgia, and I think complementary football, I think if one team needs to muster a ground game, I think you have to trust Georgia's offensive line and rushing attack right now.
And which defense do you trust more, Texas or Georgia?
Man, that's tough, isn't it? I mean, don't you have to maybe lean Texas just a little bit? Maybe almost from the perspective of if you need somebody to kind of create a play, Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, like you got to force a turnover, like you kind of like they're the difference makers. Also, it sounds like Michael Taft is back this week for Texas. I think Texas, from a defensive perspective, matches up really well against Georgia. Is that fair?
Yeah, but I asked those questions for one specific reason. I wasn't trying to lead you, but it's weird that we got Sarkisian and Arch, and we got more confidence in Gunnar. And we got Kirby and Glenn Schumann, who many people preseason had as like the next assistant that was going to land a coaching job. And we got more confidence in Texas. It's just a weird place to be in, if you ask me.
Do you disagree with me on those calls?
No, not at all.
I mean, I think Georgia's defense is good. It's not as good as some of the groups that won the national title, but it's like an impossible standard to meet, like holding teams to like 11, 12 points a game, Mike. But Georgia is 58th in the country in defensive success. They're tied for 70th in pass defense success rate. Texas is actually worse. They're 83rd. Think they may have been taking on some water the last couple of weeks without Michael Taft. And we saw that, of course, Florida a few weeks ago hit some big plays against this group. So, I mean, both defenses at times have been gettable, but I kind of think I would trust, Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. If there's a play or two, somebody's got to force a turnover, you need a game-changing play, maybe you lean Texas, but it's not a huge lean on my part.
And then do you think there's any advantage to Texas having 2 weeks to prepare for this game?
I do. Because if you're Texas, I think you have to go into that off week thinking the last 6 quarters or so, you maybe have done some things offensively that started to work. They got Hudson back. They shuffled their offensive line. Maybe they're not as prolific on the ground as they'd like to be, but maybe they've got a right formula to where they can just do enough. Manning's playing with some confidence, and now you can start to stack and build on that. Plus, the off week, Mike, probably got Taft healthy to play. I think was it Jelani McDonald supposed to be back, and also Ryan Wingo off the injury against Vanderbilt. So not having to play a couple SEC games, getting some guys back, that's a huge advantage.
And then, now this one I am trying to set you up for. Is this the Arch Manning legacy game?
He's got a chance to answer some haters, right? Yeah. I think the tricky part about this for Arch is going to be that every throw on Saturday night is going to be dissected. And whether it's fair or not, he's in a no-win situation because Georgia's defense probably isn't as good as it has been. It's still very good, but it's not the group that played, like I said, for the national championship. So if he has a good game, it's, well, Georgia's not as good on defense. But if he has a bad game, he had a bad game against the defense that's maybe not as good. So he's in a no-win situation. But I think if I'm a Texas fan, what would give me confidence in is the way that he's played the last couple of weeks. It really feels like things are starting to slow down and he's seeing the field really well. So if I'm a Texas fan, I'm going to this game with more confidence in Arch than I did a few weeks ago, maybe against Oklahoma and Florida, those games.
Mm-hmm. And it still blows my mind. Texas, Georgia. It's a conference game. You know what?
Oh, man. But isn't it great, though? I mean, just look at those helmets up there, seeing Texas and Georgia playing. We saw them play twice last year. Man, this Saturday, the epicenter of college football has got to be the SEC with this game and then the Oklahoma-Alabama game.
And then just as equally as wild, but equally as great, Alabama hosting Oklahoma. Again, it just blows my mind. This is a conference game. I should be used to it by now, but it's fantastic to see these two brands go at it. Playoff hopes on the line for Oklahoma, Bama. On second glance, I didn't completely dismiss it, but I think I said on the power ranking show, I think I said 10 to 15% chance Oklahoma wins it. I think I'm closer to about 35, 40% upon further review. What's your thoughts, Stephen? Oklahoma, 2 weeks to prepare, just like Texas, against Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
I would agree with you on Oklahoma's chances to win this game, Mike. I think they're actually pretty solid. I don't want to scare any Alabama fans because feel like I was, dogging them with the run game and all that earlier. That's not the case. I think this is absolutely a playoff team. But I think when you break this game down, what stands out to you right away is what's going to happen in the trenches. Oklahoma's defensive front, with or without R. Mason Thomas, is going to be coming on Saturday night at Ty Simpson. And Alabama's offensive line has been pretty good in pass protection. But now here's a really good Oklahoma front. And then how Alabama blocks this front, but also I think, and this is a small thing, but pocket navigation by Ty Simpson, I think is going to be pretty important because it may only take a sidestep. It may be stepping up in the pocket. We've seen him do that this year, and then it helps create plays downfield. I bring that up because both Tennessee and Ole Miss found success against this Oklahoma defense. And Aguilar hit some plays downfield. He made a lot of mistakes, but they're there. I think if Alabama blocks and they have success, I think Alabama's receivers will have success on Saturday night through the air. So I think that's the battle. I mean, it's just like strength on strength, and you flip it around. Alabama's defense is solid, and now you got Mateer trending up. You get the Oklahoma run game trending up. There's some really just fascinating kind of one-on-ones and battles set to play out on Saturday.
How big do you think it'll be Oklahoma to see if they can generate a running game with or without Mateer? Early in the season, he kind of was the running game, but it seems like they've been able to establish a lot more in the last couple of weeks with Blaylock and Xavier Robinson. How critical do you think that could be to the outcome of this game?
I think it's very critical. I almost wanted to answer your question. It's like maybe which team wins the rushing battle comes out on top on Saturday night, because I guess Alabama could win it by not being ahead of Oklahoma on the rushing totals. But I think back to that Tennessee game, and I did feel like Mateer may have found like the sweet spot of where he needed to play. Obviously, throwing the ball to traffic, getting it picked off is not what you want. But there's got to be a balance of him as far as running, moving around in the pocket, taking some chances, and then using Robinson and Blaylock on the ground. We have seen that Alabama's had some trouble with mobile quarterbacks at times, thinking about Castellanos and, of course, Diego Pavia over the last couple of years. Arch made some plays against, of course, Oklahoma too. So the mobile quarterbacks for every defense, I guess, can give them trouble. But if I'm Alabama's defense on Saturday, maybe using Mateer's legs and then mixing in some of those and staying out of third and long, which is critical for both, is probably pretty crucial.
And then we should not, you can never take too much from last year's. Completely different teams, different quarterbacks. But do you think that last year, from what I remember of the game, Oklahoma ran all over Bama. But what was also critical was turnovers. And we just want to throw all that on Jalen Milroe, which maybe it was. But I say all that to ask you this, Stephen. Is there a chance that old Brent Venables has a really good read on old Kalen DeBoering and his offense? What's your thoughts on that?
Or is there some of the sign shenanigans? Because Ryan Grubb has already kind of said this week they're going to be switching up some of their signals. It was a thing with Ole Miss, and that's not to say Oklahoma's cheating. It's just that they might be really good at deciphering what defenses are or how offenses are preparing and defenses for Venables. So, Mike, I think just thinking about last year's game, Oklahoma ran for 257 against Alabama. So I think to your point is, if you're in a game that's less than a touchdown spread, you got to figure it's going to be pretty tight again. If you're Oklahoma, if you got a pretty good read on this, if you're getting Ty Simpson in third and longs and you can get a takeaway or two and you got a short field for your offense, which has been having its own issues. I mean, that's a pretty favorable path for Oklahoma to try and win this game on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be a good one, Stephen. Shout out to Token. Give us $20, Stephen. My best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid who's going with this girl who saw Kiffin at the Velvet Ditch. I guess it's pretty serious. Kiffin is staying. So that was a lot.
Yeah.
They're fired up down there. You know what?
The first of all, thanks for your question and watching the show. I was trying to understand the first part. And it totally made me miss the second part, which is actually pretty important. Mike, by the way, how about Lane Kiffin Saturday, like doing a little trolling of Mississippi State at the halftime interview, and then goes out for a proposal, all about commitment, right?
He's just having too much fun in Mississippi. There's no shot he leaves. Meanwhile, they asked him today, hey, what do you value in a job? And he said, well, let's see. He said, NIL, the money, he's money for paying the players. He said, location, championships, Heisman winners. And I was sitting here like, Oxford, do they have any championships? Do they got any Heisman? Do they have any, where's the location for talent? All the things he said, it was like Gainesville. Huh. And you just look at the comments, Stephen. It's gone viral since I tweeted it. It's Ole Miss fans like, see, he's talking about Oxford. And then it's all the Florida fans be like, I knew it. He's talking about Florida. I mean, this was like, we literally listened to the exact same thing, and we just all interpret it however the hell we want. The guy's a damn genius. You know what?
There might be some trolling in there, right?
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah, and you're right. I think if you're LSU or Florida and you're looking for bat signals, you're probably like, oh, I see that. If you're an Ole Miss fan, you're probably like, oh yeah, I see that. So you can read what you want to some of those comments. I don't think Lane is done trolling. I think he was doing spot the ball this week with Florida. Like he's in his bag, and especially with an off week coming up, there'll be more.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Cannot wait. I also cannot wait, Stephen. Let's go there for that game. Florida at Ole Miss. I know the spread is large here, 16.5, but there's a lot around this game. There's the weirdness. He's already been asked half a dozen times this week, about his decision and like he's a free agent, which he's technically not, but I guess you kind of always are as a coach. Does any of that overshadow the game? What's your thoughts on that?
I guess everybody's a free agent to some extent, players every year with the portal, coaches. So, man, what a wild time in the world of college football. I kind of dubbed this the Lane Kiffin Bowl, I guess, because that's what we're,
Right.
the focus is going to be on Lane Kiffin. And, not to overlook this game at all for Ole Miss, but I think there's got to be some question about what kind of fight are you going to get out of Florida, because it wasn't there in the second half against Kentucky. Now, maybe some things spiraled out of control. Maybe this week they reset. But man, I mean, the injury list, no Trey Wilson, DJ Lagway getting benched. I mean, you just wonder from a kind of psychological point, where is this Florida team given what's happened this season and given what happened last week? And I think the mission for Ole Miss is pretty simple. You get this game on Saturday, and then around the SEC, there's Texas and Georgia, there's Alabama and Oklahoma, those big time matchups. And you think about where Ole Miss sits in the race to get to Atlanta in the SEC championship. So Ole Miss could be in the clubhouse in a pretty good spot, given what happens on Saturday, to either make the playoff, which I think they are, and the SEC championship. So a lot at stake almost for Ole Miss to just finish the job, take care of business, get to the off week, and get the Egg Bowl in a few weeks.
Yes, but also, Stephen, I'm sitting here thinking, again, we should not probably put a ton of stock, if any, into what happened last year, right? But similar to the Oklahoma-Bama game I was asking you about, what happened last year for Ole Miss? They had a weak schedule, and they ran through everybody, and then when they finally got a little bit of a test, they fell flat. Now it's almost a role reversal, where the schedule was fairly difficult right out the gate, and they surprised a lot of people, and they got hot. Now the tail end, it's kind of easy or easier, and maybe they get overconfident because they're beating the heck out of all these garbage teams at the end of the year. Does that potentially set them up for failure when they get to the postseason?
That's a good question. I think in terms of navigating the next couple weeks, I think maybe the only thing, and I should say, a trip to Starkville to decide the Egg Bowl is probably going to be a lot more difficult than most people think. But I think maybe this game is more about like navigating the distractions, because the whole Kiffin thing, don't be too overconfident and beat Florida. I think when they get to the playoff, I'm not worried about probably like the overconfidence or underconfidence of Ole Miss. I think if they get there, they have the potential to do some damage. And I know like a lot of the rosters changed over from last season, but there ought to be some motivation to finish the job and to do the damage that last year's playoff team should have done if they made the playoff.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought I would ask that, Stephen, because it just hit me. It's a little bit of a reversal last year. All right. How about Mississippi State at Missouri, Stephen? Now, this game is a lot more intriguing after Missouri has really taken a step back. I know they can run the football like nobody's business, but Mississippi State desperately needs a win to get to the postseason, because if they don't get it here, they got to get it in the Egg Bowl. This one seems far more manageable. What's your thoughts on Mississippi State at Missouri?
I think my first thought is, after getting hammered by Georgia last week on the ground, if I'm Eli Drakowitz and Kirby Moore, I might need the old, like, Mike, I don't know if you played Tecmo Bowl on Nintendo.
Oh, yeah.
But they had like the 4 plays, I mean, that might be all you need, halfback toss, whatever it is, because I mean, this is a physical challenge for Mississippi State. And if you're Missouri, there is certainly the disappointment off of last week's game, you're out of the playoff chase. But I also think there's still a chance to finish the season on a high note. It's your last home game. The way that Hardy and Roberts can run the ball against this defense, they probably don't need a huge game from Zoller. So I think there's a lot of matchups that favor Missouri. I think the other side of it is, if you're Mississippi State, is there's still a chance to get to a bowl game. You're right. This is probably more doable than Ole Miss. I still think rivalry games, sometimes you throw out the records and there's a chance that maybe Mississippi State can surprise. But to me, this looks like a trenches game. And that favors Missouri pretty heavily, with the run game and the pass rush probably getting after a shorthanded Mississippi State offensive line.
Okay. Interesting. How about the battle for the Golden Boot? Arkansas at LSU. LSU's a little bit of, I don't know if turmoil. Well, yeah. You ask the governor, it's a turmoil down there. They don't know who's playing quarterback. They don't know who's going to be their head coach. Arkansas 2 weeks to prepare. They, and this is another one, Stephen, where it's like one side, Arkansas, they value this as a rivalry, and LSU, they're like, I know there's a trophy, but this ain't a rival. So sometimes that really favors the team that really values this game.
I think it could favor Arkansas on Saturday. I mean, the spread's only less than under a touchdown. I think it's around 5 or so. Mike, I think, first of all, there's 2 interim coaches here, and that's what makes this game hard to figure out. And to add what you said about the rivalry, I mean, interim coaches, I bet it probably means a little bit more for Arkansas. I think they're playing with a little bit more desperation. And so just thinking about those 2 things and wondering which one of these teams is going to show up on Saturday and be motivated when this game really isn't, it's not, other times this game has been kind of in the spotlight, whether it's been, kind of marquee matchups. But with all these marquee matchups around the SEC, it's going to be a little bit under the radar nationally. So you're both playing for pride. There's some rivalry bragging rights here. But I think just in terms of individual matchups, I think watching Taylon Green play an LSU defense that battled hard against Ty Simpson last Saturday, and then for LSU offensively, how much is Nussmeier? How much is Michael Van Buren? They're both going to play. It sounds like Nussmeier probably starts. I mean, frankly, if LSU's offense doesn't move the ball on Saturday, I'm going to be very worried given how Arkansas has played defensively this year.
And any consideration, Stephen, to the fact that this is an early game? They love the night game down there in LSU. We got to bend over backwards to give them the night game every week, even though they don't deserve it. So thank goodness the SEC wised up and said, you don't deserve one. How about you win some games before you get another night game? But, how engaged will the fans be? Arkansas is a team that can really jump on you because they have an elite offense. There's a real possibility. I'm not saying Arkansas is going to run them out of the building like A&M or anything, but the last time we saw this venue, man, the fans cleared out of there early. It's a little bit of a tricky spot, I think. Early game. These fans don't like it early. Could we? And we had Chris Marler on earlier. He said, well, there's a possibility that Garrett Nussmeier could be getting booed by the home fan. I mean, there's a lot. I'm throwing a lot at you here, but I mean, this could be a toxic environment for LSU, perhaps. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, I think that's why if you're Arkansas, you're sitting here thinking, man, we got a good chance to go steal this game. I mean, you're right. Like the early kickoff, it's sleepy. LSU, coming off the loss to Alabama. At some point, how much fight is there? Obviously, Whit Weeks has been banged up. Is he back? I mean, Taylon Green's the type of player that if you give him 2 possessions, he could score. You're down 14-0. The offense has sucked. You're getting booed. Like this could really spiral out of control for LSU. So I think getting off to a good start and kind of keeping that home crowd engaged would be a good thing if Frank Wilson wants to get LSU a victory on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about South Carolina at mighty Texas A&M 18.5-point spread? But Carolina's had 2 weeks to prepare, so there's that.
Mike, I think the big question is, what does South Carolina do offensively? Can they find a spark? after the off week. You've changed play callers, you've changed offensive line coaches. So maybe there's some different stuff they can do this week. The problem is, even if you catch A&M off guard, I still think there are a lot of personnel limitations with this offense. I mean, they don't run the ball well. They've had inconsistency at receiver. The offensive line is an issue. There is a lot of Lenore Sellers make something out of this. And so I think he's got to have a massive game on Saturday for South Carolina to have any shot at the upset. The battle between Sellers and A&M's defense is going to be fun. Seeing any kind of tweaks offensively for South Carolina, that's going to be a must-see thing too. But ultimately, Mike, I mean, this A&M team, they've just been taking care of business each week. And with this game in Samford, they have a clear runway to get to 11-0. There's just not a lot of matchups that really favor South Carolina in this game, especially with the firepower that A&M has and the way they've been playing defense.
Yep. All right, no more. That was the last one. All right, so yeah, I mean, I agree everything you just said. Any thoughts on New Mexico, Tennessee? Again, a 40-point spread. I guess New Mexico State, not that good of a team anymore, huh?
That's because Diego Pavia, Jerry Kill, and Tim Beck are not coming to Knoxville, Mike. New Mexico State, not much of a threat for Tennessee. They did start 2-0, but they're 1-6 in their last 7 games. They've had some close calls in there, but I will tell you, Conference USA is a pretty steep drop from the SEC. This is the first power conference team that New Mexico State has played this year. They've been pretty one-dimensional on offense. They've had to shuffle their offensive line, do some injuries. They've had trouble against the pass rush. That's probably not a good sign against Tennessee's front. So to me, this is all about Tennessee. They should really be able to take control early and really kind of set their number on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, the most conversation I've heard from Tennessee fans over the last couple of days is they're curious to see who the second quarterback will be, because a lot of people want to see the true freshman George McIntyre. So, yeah, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about this one. And then last but not, hey, Texas Tech, they're undefeated. And we got a spread for this game for somehow, some way. Kentucky, although they are a 3-touchdown favorite, 22.5. Can Kentucky keep that? Is this at all a tricky game for Kentucky, you think?
I have to admit, Mike, I don't know a ton about Tennessee Tech, but what I do know is they have one of the better scoring offenses at the FCS level. And they have been very good, of course, this year, in great shape to be an FCS playoff team. So they are, I guess, I don't want to say dangerous. I guess they are. I mean, the way they can score and how good they've been this year. We just don't have another kind of power opponent to compare them to. I would like to have seen them play one earlier this year to give us an idea. Maybe because they are so good, maybe Kentucky's not looking past them. You know, if they were maybe like 8-1 and 15th in the FCS rankings, maybe Kentucky might look past them a little bit. But I think for the fact that they've been talked up enough, maybe. And also, if you're Tennessee Tech, are you trying to win this game or are you trying to win the FCS playoffs? So, do you play some of those guys who might be on the edge? Bobby Wilder is the coach at Tennessee Tech, and he was a coach at Old Dominion a few years ago. Pretty good on offense. He's been experienced at the FBS level, so I don't think they'll necessarily be overwhelmed. I just think if you're Kentucky, just keep doing what you're doing, take care of business, and set up for an interesting couple weeks here with the run to a bowl game.
All right, Stephen, you do so much for us, but this is the first time I think I'm ever going to give you homework. Go learn everything about Tennessee Tech by Wednesday's Pick'em show. I demand it. But, man, I can't thank you enough. We've already blown past 2 hours here. You got any final thoughts here?
Mike, I think maybe we talked about this at the start of the show, but it is crazy. I guess it's crazy to sit here and see that we talked about on the show where DJ Lagway and Nussmeier were benched. And I've been thinking about that a lot the last couple of weeks of just how weird the season has been. but also just thinking about that and thinking about what's still to come this year. Like what's going to happen this Saturday, and what kind of twists and turns are we still in for, and what's going to be a pretty fun close to the season. So just can't wait to get to Saturday, man. These matchups are going to be awesome.
Right. Yeah. Always, man. We always get fired up for this weekend, these weekends in the Southeastern Conference. But before you go, Stephen, as always, remind the cousins, where can they follow you? Where can they find your work?
You can follow all my work over at athlonsports.com. You can follow me on Twitter at AthlonSteven, Stephen LCFB, over on the Facebook and Instagrams.
All right, Stephen, thank you again for dropping all this knowledge. Cannot wait for your Wednesday predictions, because you are the GOAT now of predictions. So everybody listens to cousin Stephen over there. And shout out JP. Today, shout out Stephen Up, All Day Trey, ZOV Jr., Freedom Van, Jason Jays, Michael Dunlap, Dealing with Dylan, Dana, Robert Jenkins, and Token. Thank you all. Thank you, Stephen. We'll catch you on the next one. I don't even know if I can end this, because it's not even telling me we're live. So we might just be stuck in this reality forever, Stephen, if I can't figure out how to shut this off. I literally don't know how to do this right now, but let's just make it as awkward as we can here.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.